Earlier this week, autism charity As I Am published the Every Child Counts report, which found that 66% of families surveyed had to wait more than 2 years to access an appropriate assessment for their child. 2 years. Over 3/4 stated that they were not in receipt of any support from the early intervention or school age-going teams or CAMs. The last finding I wish to mention, and crucial to this debate, is that 40% of respondents' autistic children have regressed, and during the COVID-19 pandemic, whether that be in their educational or their interpersonal skills. What that suggests to me and every right-minded person is that the presentation that is outlined in the Minister previously, that everything was okay, it clearly isn't. Things weren't okay pre-pandemic, they weren't certainly exacerbated during the pandemic, and post-pandemic we're a long way from where we need to be. And there's a narrative quickly developing that is deeply worrying to me, and that's the trauma, the isolation and the regression that was experienced by many people and their children with disabilities over the course of the pandemic is no longer an issue. A summer programme isn't even close to being enough to address this. And I'll repeat a call I've made time and time again, that a return to normal pre-pandemic just isn't good enough. There was a wave of unmet needs prior to COVID for people with disabilities, and it has only widened because of the pandemic. We need to have more ambition and stop being bystanders when it comes to advancing the right of people with disabilities. It is 17 years and we are still awaiting the full implementation of the EPSON Act. Education for Persons with Special Education Needs Act 2004, and it is still not fully implemented. An extraordinary indictment upon this state. And what good is it to have a legal requirement to begin an assessment of needs within 3 months of receiving an application if less than 10% of assessments are completed on time? Where is the ambition, where are the resources, and where is the funding to adequately address this? In my own role as spokesperson for education, instead of conversations around enhancements and additional resources for students with disabilities, we are talking about how things will be maintained and frozen going into the next academic year. And I want to highlight one specific issue, and that's SNAs and the exceptional review. Schools are facing a cliff edge come September. In my own constituencies and schools close to mine, this is the conversation that's been ongoing. This is what schools and principals are contacting me about. The government line is that nothing for 2021-2022 school year will be taken away, but also nothing will be given. Isn't that right? In a PQ reply to me, Minister Joseph O'Madigan confirmed to me that existing mainstream class SNA allocations in schools on the 30th of April 2021 will be maintained and a rollover into the next school year. But what good is that to the many schools who are set to receive an increase in students with special needs who require the support or partial support of an SNA? Students who may be transitioning into secondary school, for example, who've had an extraordinarily difficult 5th year, who've had their 6th year completely upturned and now go into secondary schools, and we're still being told that the basic provision of SNA that existed that was simply inadequate at the time pre-pandemic is going to be adequate now. It's farcical. And just to continue on this point, because I think we're in a dangerous space, the appeal, the process of exceptional reviews is not fit for purpose. There is no timeline for the exceptional review process, and secondary schools won't have the process completed till after September when the SENO visits. So many primary school students with disabilities who are at their 5th class and their 6th class marked by COVID will not have the resources available and put in place in September. If we can make one ask of the Minister, is that we address that issue. It's a cliff edge facing many schools, and the trauma that has been exacerbated through the pandemic will be widened. The gap in educational access and educational dignity will be widened further come September. So if we can take one thing that stems from this particular debate, let it be that. I believe it's morally reprehensible, and I strongly encourage the Minister to address it.